Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And here's Dr. Bob.
Hello.
The anonymous letter to the New York Times. So we're holding things together. This guy is nuts.
Frames itself as saying we're saving America from this crazy man in the White House. And so the question is, and the New York Times says they know who the author is, and I assume they do, and they say that the author is a high-level Trump administrator. That I rather doubt. Who's high-level and who's not. No, I think what we're dealing with here is something we've mentioned before here on the program, and when Trump comes in to clean up the swamp, he's got a lot of Republicans, not so many Republicans, but I guess conservative think tanks and such that have gotten nested themselves pretty nicely inside the Beltway, and things are pretty pleasant for them as well. They can go around criticizing those evil Democrats and such, but frankly, they're doing just as well as a lot of the liberal think tanks. And so in comes Trump and starts tearing the place to pieces. And, of course, Bill Kristol at the Weekly Standard has, from the very beginning, had the anybody but Trump approach. And a number of these other so-called traditional conservatives have also been very unhappy with Trump. So I think the idea that there's somebody in the Trump administration that's willing to write something like that is quite possible. And I think I'll bet you're going to find that this is going to trace itself back to the Koch brothers, because Trump in the race, where was it, Wisconsin and Ohio, the Koch brothers said that they were not going to endorse the Republican because the Republican supported Trump, and the Koch brothers are really, really big on things like free trade, and they're angry about Trump's use of tariffs. And then, of course, they pour a ton of money into a lot of these conservative Republican races. And Trump, of course, has publicly attacked them. And really basically told them go fly a kite. And so I wouldn't be surprised that kind of from that origin that the Koch brothers have managed to get somebody to put something like this in print. And, of course, it just goes to show you how far these people will go to undermine the Trump and his policies. And it just goes to show you, again, how threatening Trump's actions have been, and how concerned a lot of these people who have been resting comfortably inside the Beltway for many, many years, they're threatened by this. And frankly, that's okay by me.
This is a surprise. Up from the Drudge Report, it links to a Washington Examiner article. It says, U.S. Senator Rand Paul says Trump would be justified in using lie detector tests to find who sent that letter to the New York Times. That seems very un-Rand Paul-like.
Yeah, well, Paul is here and there come in and behind Trump pretty strongly here in the last few weeks. This wouldn't be the first time that lie detector tests have been used. Frankly, and I'm sure this has gotten under Trump's skin, but frankly, I don't think it's worth spending much time on it in that respect. It is kind of interesting, and this idea that the resistance is going on inside the Trump administration. As Lindsey Graham there Wednesday night, I was listening to him, and Lindsey Graham, would speak up if he felt that there was some truth to this. He said this is all BS. If there was something like this going on, he'd be aware of it, and there's nothing like that. Now, it can also tie into the whole McCain fiasco, which I think was, again, kind of a reflection of the sickness of American politics and the use of McCain's funeral to try to attack Trump as much as you can. I mean, come on. It's just kind of sick.
That's getting to be what a lot of national funerals have become.
Yeah, it's sad. And I think, frankly, it turns off a lot of Americans, that sort of thing.
What do you make of this whole thing? And Newt Gingrich talked about this the other day on one of the shows. This whole idea of alienating all the Trump supporters, which is what, 50-60% of the people?
Well,
I mean, how smart a strategy is that?
Well, I don't know that Trump has 50 or 60% of the public. I mean, his poll numbers run around 44, 45%, pretty consistently, and sometimes up close to 50, which is, pretty good support given the guy's controversial stances and the kinds of decisions he's making. So the idea that, Gingrich's point is, why would you irritate these people who, for the most part, I think are standing pretty strongly behind Trump? So we'll just have to see. So what else are we going to talk about here, Brian?
Well, I wanted to ask you quickly, that story that broke in Pennsylvania, 2 or 3 weeks ago about the priest arrests in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That ties in with the Vatican.
Yeah.
And also you have the angle of New York State. Acting Attorney General Barbara Underwood is subpoenaing all the Catholic dioceses to find out the records on how they handled sex abuse in all the different parishes, Catholic churches in New York State. Did you have any thoughts on either of those two? How Pope Francis is coming along, and the idea of the State Attorney General investigating the church?
Well, I think I would feel better if the church were taking some measures here themselves to deal with this problem. And again, as we're talking about, the country kind of going down in a basket there, and now you got the Catholic Church kind of disassembling here in this whole sexual abuse situation. And, the Catholic Church, for many people, to put it mildly, is a very, very solid framework for their lives and the way they look at the world. And it's really tragic. It's tragic what was happening, and it's tragic the effects it's going to have on a lot of strong believers. And I really feel sorry for them. But I can't tell the Catholics how to run their church. We tried that back in the 16th century, and had all kinds of problems.
Well, Doc, former host of this show, Kevin Doran, used to say that the ultimate goal was of the left in government was to either shut down the church or make it so the church couldn't function or say anything when it comes to things like abortion and any of the social issues. Yeah,
well,
does all this news, especially the news that comes out of the Vatican that the Pope is supposed to have known about cover-ups and covered up for cover-ups, do these stories damage the church's ability to say no to this and no to that?
I think it damages the church's ability. I don't think there's any question about it. But you want to talk about resistance, in the Trump administration, obviously there's a resistance movement in the highest levels of the Catholic Church. And, how Pope Francis handles this, I don't know. But we've already had one pope just simply resign here.
That would get into Middle Ages type scenario if you had 2-3 popes at the same time.
Pope here, pope there, and let's get another pope. I don't know. I feel sorry for the Catholics. I think somehow they're going to have to rectify this. And, frankly, I just wish they'd allow clerics to marry. I think that would have a tremendously beneficial effect across the board. first of all, you get a lot more clerics, I think, and second of all, you probably wouldn't run into these sexual abuse situations nearly as often. But again, I can't tell the church how to handle its affairs. They got to work this out themselves.
Cynthia Nixon, Andrew Cuomo.
Yes.
She's really coming after him hard on the issue of the New York City subway. I think that gets a lot of attention around here because the Alstom guys work on New York City subway cars.
Oh, I see.
There's been contracts for that. Cynthia Nixon has a new ad out. Fix the subway and tax the rich. Yeah. That's exactly what I said. What do you think this does to the Cuomo campaign?
I think Cuomo's in serious trouble. The latest, I think, expenditure report showed he's put $16 million in this campaign against Cynthia Nixon. And I don't remember how much she's put. I don't think she's even put $1 million in yet. But the polls that are just released here Thursday showed that in a Nixon or in a Molinaro-Cuomo head-to-head, Cuomo was up 3 points. And then if you threw all the other candidates in there, Nixon on the working families, Stephanie Miner out of Syracuse, who's got the, I think it's Save America line, and then you got the Green candidate, Hawkins, and so those would be the liberal candidates that are going to be out there, and they're going to draw pretty heavily, I think, from Cuomo's Democrat support. So again, you throw all the multiple candidates in there, and the poll I saw showed Cuomo up 1 point over Molinaro. So that's got obviously Cuomo very concerned, and I think Molinaro has if this goes the direction it could easily go, Cuomo's going to be in serious trouble. And the one race, as we've said again and again, to watch is that lieutenant governor's race.
Yes, New York Times just had an interesting article about that.
Is that right, Brian? They finally caught up with us, huh?
They must be listening to you.
Well, us, Brian. Brian, you're part of the team here. Well, so at any rate, Brian, we don't need to go there to the Drudge Report. And
I'm not. I'm actually on the Huffington Post, but I do have an interesting question from it.
Go ahead.
On the state attorney general's race, this just broke on Thursday. Zephyr Teachout, the state attorney general candidate,
right,
has filed a lawsuit accusing Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, who's also running for state attorney general. Teachout says Maloney violated a big campaign finance law. She says that he used over $1.4 million from the congressional campaign funds to use that money in the attorney general's race. Is that a no? Is that a big no-no?
I'm not sure. It would be the other way. The other way around, it certainly would be. You can't take funds raised for, say, a state senate race and put them over into a congressional race because the limits and such are different. I don't know about the other way around. I think Teachout's getting a lot of publicity, and given her name recognition and such, I'd think she'd have a pretty good shot there in that Democratic primary. But again, going back to the lieutenant governor's situation, I think increasingly it looks like Hochul, is in pretty serious trouble. And obviously, if this guy Williams beats her for lieutenant governor, then that's going to make Cuomo's efforts there in the general election even more difficult. Cynthia Nixon is not going to beat Cuomo in the primary. Let's be clear on that.
Could she beat him in November?
No. The only one that can beat him in November is Molinaro. And, it kind of irritates me, and this is going to raise some hackles, but we've got some Republican legislators over in Allegheny County who, ran as Republicans and now have decided they're going to be libertarians.
And they're going with Larry Sharpe.
Right, and this is not the time to be doing that. I want to be a libertarian, run as a libertarian. Well, obviously you can't get elected. But why you would switch at a time when you got a real shot, frankly, at knocking Cuomo off. I mean, the libertarian, I think the polls I saw showed Sharp carrying something like 5% or so. Well, that's enough to make the difference right there. And he's on the ballot, too. There were attempts to challenge Minor and one or two others, but as far as I know, almost everybody's gotten on the ballot except the guy that's running on the rent's too damned high ticket. I don't think he made it. I think his signatures were not...
You seem to think that Mark Molinaro, and I'm guessing this just by the way you're saying it, but I'm guessing you think that Mark Molinaro has a better chance than Rob Astorino did?
Right now, yeah.
Would that be because of the Buffalo Billion and similar
yes,
problems?
Oh, absolutely.
All that baggage
absolutely, and the ability. See, you got to remember when Astorino ran, Cuomo was able to get the working families endorsement, and he doesn't have that this time around. Nixon has it, so he's not been able to shut off some of these third-party efforts that pretty clearly are going to cut into his support. So I think he's in serious trouble, and I think the corruption issue is a huge issue, and frankly is a very important issue. And the thing about people like Teachout and Cynthia Nixon, whether you like their crazy ideas or not, I don't see them being corrupt. There's no reason for them to be, frankly. Not that they're to the point where, they're multimillionaires or anything of that sort, but, the way they're running and their attitude toward lobbyist money and such, that's... Was
this a problem that Mario Cuomo had, too? I don't remember those sorts of issues during
Andrew's father, Mario, was, I think he was a lot cleaner operation across the board. I think
he was a lot more liked by...
Oh, yeah, much more likable fellow. And the problem is the newspapers and the media down in New York City, Cuomo tends to be just, terribly arrogant and nasty. And so they don't have any use for him either. So
no, they don't.
I'm sorry?
They really don't. I look at the press conferences, those brief little things in the hallway in the Capitol with the reporters.
Yeah, no.
He's not friendly to them.
No. And again, Cynthia Nixon, of course, knows a lot of those people, and being an actress.
And they like her a lot.
Yeah. So she's getting a heck of a lot of free publicity and good publicity. So it's wild and woolly, buddy, I'll tell you that.
She really zinged him. And it was a statement she was giving to reporters a few weeks ago. The rumor was that the person who came up with the slogan back in the 1980s when Mario Cuomo faced opposition from Ed Koch, the mayor of New York City, right. there was a slogan, "Vote for Cuomo, not the homo," right. implying that Ed Koch was homosexual. So Cynthia Nixon zinged Andrew Cuomo with that because they've always said that it was Andrew Cuomo that came up with that.
I always thought it was too that was putting those signs around.
Yeah.
Right.
And she came out, and she's a lesbian, and she came out and said, "Vote for the homo, not for Cuomo." They all broke up laughing.
I think that's some baggage Cuomo was carrying. Now, whether he did it or not, I don't know. But it didn't help Koch at all, that's for sure. I was thinking that too. That's a legitimate.
Do you think Teachout has a pretty good shot at being the next AG?
Yeah, absolutely.
If Molinaro wins in November, like you think he might,
right?
Do you see? Keith Moffitt winning the Republican Attorney General's race? I mean, do you think that they would go Republican all across the board?
No,
do you think it would be mixed parties? How do you think that'd work?
Right. No. I think the Democrats will still do all right statewide. For those offices. First of all, you're going to find a lot of these, and again, I don't know who's running on these other lines for those party positions. I wouldn't be surprised if Teachout's also on the working families, but I don't know. There may be somebody else. But the run-of-the-mill Democrats irritated at Cuomo and voting for Nixon and such will probably continue to vote down the Democratic line. So,
is it possible? Is it just with the two scenarios that you've presented? Mark Molinaro could win and Jermaine Williams could win. Is it possible that the two could both win?
Yes.
So you could have a Republican Mark Molinaro.
No.
And
no,
Jermaine Williams, and it's the same time?
No, they run as a pair in the general election.
Okay.
So you can't have the situation like you do in the primary here.
Okay.
So Molinaro, whoever that woman he has as his lieutenant governor, would be the... And the fact of the matter is, Williams might well help Cuomo if he beats Hochul.
The person you just referred to, Julie Killian, is the lieutenant governor's candidate.
Right. She's
coming up soon on a Newsmaker.
Yeah, I've heard good things about her. I don't know, but the point is, if Cuomo has this guy Williams running as the lieutenant governor, I think the turnout in some of these inner city areas might actually help Cuomo. So it's one of those things where there's a silver lining there somewhere.
Doc, we are out of time. I want to thank you so much.
We didn't take a break or anything?
No.
You worked me right through without a break?
Imagine that.
All right.
Thanks, Doc.
Take it away.
And speaking of not having taken a break, that means meteorologist Rob Carolyn has been on hold for some time. Hi there.
Exactly, and now I'm swimming up to my eyeballs. Well, I got cooler temperatures and lower humidity, Brian. We've got a new air mass building in. It's sitting north of the Great Lakes this morning. It's going to work its way to the east and make it feel like September over the next couple of days. If you haven't needed the sweatshirts, the jackets, the warmer weather clothing in a while, you may want to start to dig it out. We're going to be quite cool, especially coming up Saturday night. Not a bad day. We're going to be partly sunny, about 75 to 80 this afternoon. Tonight we're partly cloudy, 50 to 55. Partial sun develops tomorrow, 65 to 70. Clear to partly cloudy, cool tomorrow night, all the way down to 45. And then looking ahead to Sunday, partial sun, 65. Brian, some pretty significant rain will arrive Sunday night and into Monday.